How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chavav, Daf 26, Masechta Ksubis. Friends, well, Daf Chavav, we kind of go weiter, talking about, how do we establish somebody is a Kohen and Eid Echod and those kinds of sugis. So, and then we're going to get to a new Mishnah on Daf Chavav Mud Beis. Here we go. So we're going to start on Daf Chof Hei Amud Beis, about 5 lines before it gets wide. Rebbe v'Reb Chia. Wow, Rebbe and Reb Chia. Gishmak. Reb Chia, of course, was a student of Rebbe, the uncle of Rav. Okay. So Rebbe v'Reb Chia Charhelo ben Alpi Oviv Lichuna. So one of them allowed us to assume that a child was a priest based on the fact that his father said so. And one of them allowed us to assume that a certain fellow was a Levite based on the fact that his brother insisted that this was so. This time the Rebbe Elo ben Alpi Oviv Lichuna. So let us say that let us conclude that Rebbe is the one who said that a child could be considered a priest based on the claim of the father. The Tanis, we learn in the Brisa, Hari Sheba Omer, you have a fellow who's a priest, and he comes and he says, B'ni zeh, this is my son, my yingel, v'choyenu, and he's a priest as well. Nemon, lachilu b'trume, and we could believe the father, based on the father's claim, we could allow this yingel to eat trume. Ve'enu nemon laseu isha, div Rebbe, but we would not rely upon the father's claim to allow the son to marry a miyuchas dike maidel. This kind of lineage requirement marriage thing, which I don't really get. We just don't really do it so much nowadays, right? I don't think we're so makbid to make sure that a Kohen marries a Bas Kohen. But anyways, this whole yuchsin thing. So, based on the admittance of the claim of the father, we can't do the whole yuchsin thing, but we can allow the fellow to eat truma. Alright, let me tell you. That's Rebbe's opinion. Reb Chia says to Rebbe, no, if you believe him to the extent that the yingel could eat truma, so believe him to the extent that the yingel could marry this miyuchas dikem idol. Now, alright, the truth is, I would think that eating truma is a more significant thing than marrying a Bas Kohen. And if you don't believe the father to the extent that the yingel can marry a Bas Kohen, so then also don't believe him that the child should be able to eat truma. So says Rebbe to Reb Chia, Ani ma'amino lachilu b'trume shebiyadu lachilu b'trume ve'eni ma'amino lasiu isha she'en biyadu lasiu isha. Alright, it gives kind of a answer that also is I think is somewhat strange, but so it says Rebbe to Reb Chia, look, Ani ma'amino lachilu b'trume, I believe the claim of the father to enable him to give his son to eat trume, shebiyadu lachilu b'trume, because it's in his hands, in his ability to give him trume to eat. I guess he takes trume, gives it to the kid. But I don't believe him to allow the kid to marry a miyuchas diga maidel, because that's outside of his power. The father, I guess, it doesn't have the control to just marry, make the shidduch happen, I guess. I don't know. This time, okay, so we see that Rebbe is kind of saying here that you can trust the father with regard to the son. So we just said that we have Rebbe and Reb Chia. One of them trusted a father with regard to the son. One of them trusted the brother with regard to his brother. So here we have a story with Rebbe regarding a father and son. So it must be that Rebbe is the one who made the claim about the father and son. So if we're saying that the situation of the father and son is Rebbe, so the situation of the brothers is Reb Chia. Alright. Reb Chia mai shno ben dilo, dikarvu etzel aviv, ach na mikarvu etzel achiv. Okay, now Reb Chia, why davka? Why do you not trust the father and son? Is it because they're related? Well, the brothers are also related. Mesiach Lefitumo. So Reb Chia says, look, I only trust them in the case of Mesiach Lefitumo. Did we have Mesiach Lefitumo recently? I imagine we've had it at some point. Mesiach Lefitumo, yeah, I feel like we've had it at some point. Mesiach Lefitumo is just like, he was just kind of talking without any kind of agenda. He was just kind of had, let down his guard and was spewing, was just saying stuff. And what he was saying was that his brother is a Levi. And because he wasn't doing it without any agenda, without any sort of thinking about the implications of what he's saying, he was just kind of, saying it unfiltered, so we could believe that unfiltered babble. There was a story with a certain fellow who was just unfilteredly babbling. No comment. And I remember when I was a young little fellow, and my father would put me on his shoulders. My father didn't put me on his shoulders. My father would put me up against the wall and say, "Don't fall." That was his shtick. I guess he assumed that we enjoyed that. I guess I remember that. Don't fall. Yeah. I wouldn't fall as long as he kept on holding me. I remember when I was a young little fellow, and I was riding on my father's shoulders, which I guess is probably a bit more sustainable than, because ultimately, I guess you could sit on your father's shoulders indefinitely, but you can only sort of stay on the wall without falling. Kind of requires sort of the infusion of additional energy at all times. So I gotta focus. So so I would be on his shoulders, and he would take me from the cheder, and he would take off my clothing, and he would chuck me in the mikveh so we could then eat truma. So this fellow, was just unfilteredly babbling, and he mentioned how when he was a young kid they would eat truma. So la'erev, right? They would be able to, meaning he would go to the mikveh during the day, and then he would be at Tvul Yom, and then at night they would eat truma. And Reb Chia would then say, "Mechaver b'dilin mimeni," and then this yingle would continue and say, and then my friends would stay away from me because now I was tahor. Vayukorin osi, and they would call me Yochanan ochel chalis, Yochanan the eater of breads. That's some name. Yochanan the eater of breads. All right. Rabbi L'chuna al-Piv, and Rabbi said, all right, this fellow is Mesiach Lefitumo. He's just unfilteredly babbling, and in that unfiltered babble, he indicated that when he was young, he would eat truma with his father. He's a kohen, and Rebbe said, okay, clearly this kid is a kohen. So we see that unfiltered babbling is reliable because it's somebody just saying something without any sort of agenda or looking to gain anything. They're just kind of, we believe that unfiltered babbling is honest. Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer. So Reb Shimon ben Elazar would say, just like truma is a chazaka for kahuna, just like if you see a fellow eating truma, you can assume that he is a kohen, a priest. So also meiser rishon, if you see a fellow eating meiser, so you can also assume that he is a priest. And if you see a fellow being granted truma from Bezdin, that doesn't necessarily mean that he is a Kohen. And the Gemara is going to ask, well, if you can't rely upon Bezdin, well then who can you rely upon? Fine. Ma'aser Rishon D'Leviu? I'm sorry, Ma'aser Rishon D'Leviu. So now the Gemara asks the question. I don't understand. Let's read that again. Back up a few lines. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Kim shetruma chazak l'chuna, kach ma'aser rishon chazak l'chuna. If you see a fellow eating meiser, you can assume he's a kohen. Now, I'm sure everybody's thinking the same thing. Truma, where am I? Ma'aser rishon D'Leviu. But one second. Who gets the Meiser? Friends, we've gone over this 1,000 times. You have a field. You first separate 2%. You give that to the Kohen. That's Truma. You then take 10%. You give that to the Levi. And that's what Meiser is. Meiser goes to the Levi, not to the Kohen. So if you see a fellow eating Meiser, why can you assume that he's a Kohen? I thought Leviim eat the Meiser. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, it's like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that we learned to Masechta Yevamis. The Tanya is we learned in the Brayso Truma the Kohen, that Truma goes to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon LeLevi, Devi Rabbi Akiva. That according to Rabbi Akiva, Truma goes to the Kohen, and Meiser goes to the Levi. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Meiser Rishon LaKohen. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that Meiser Rishon goes to a Kohen. Emer Dom Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Af LeKohen. But one second. I'll say that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah means that you can even give Meiser to a Kohen. LeKohen v'lo LeLevi miyomer. But did he say that dafka you give it to a Kohen but not to a Levi? Right? Meaning, we just said that if you see a fellow eating Meiser, you can assume he's a Kohen. We asked, but doesn't Meiser go to the Levi, not to the Kohen? So then we say, well, it's Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's opinion who says that Meiser dafka does go to the Kohen. Right? Right? So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says the Meiser dafka does go to the Kohen. To which we say, 1 second. We'll say Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says you can even give Meiser to a Kohen, but Mimele, Meiser goes to a Levi. Meikar Adin. So, and for the Gemara, maybe you remember this from Masechta Yevamis, in Basar de Kansinu Ezra. It was after the Knas of Ezra, that Ezra said that because the Levites did not come back to Eretz Yisrael for the second temple, so he fined them and said, that's it, you're not getting the Meiser, rather Meiser is going to the Kohanim. And therefore, from that point on, Meiser specifically goes to the priests and not to the Levites, and therefore, if you see a fellow eating Meiser, you can assume that he is a priest, not a Levite. A Kohen, not a Levi. V'duma ikru v'yayvule. But still, I mean, maybe it's talking about a situation where it happened to be that they gave Meiser to a Levi. I mean, even though Meikar then you should give Meiser to the Kohanim at this point, after the Knas. But say a fellow gave Meiser to a, what did I just say? After the Knas, Meiser should go to the Kohanim. Now, say a fellow did end up giving Meiser for whatever reason to a Levi, he would be able to eat it. So, don't we have to be concerned that if you see a fellow eating Meiser, there is a chance that he might be a Levi? So it says of Chizda, well, it's talking about a situation where you see this fellow eating Meiser. Now we have a chazake that this fellow's father is a Kohen. However, the Yentis, it was a Shabbos afternoon in the bungalow colony, and the Yentis were bored, and they're trying to think what they could talk about, and they decided that maybe this fellow who's a Kohen, his son maybe is a Ben Gusha Ben Chalutza, and he's maybe a Chalal, and then rumors started swirling. And then what happened was they gave this fellow Meiser. So then Levi dlav Leviu. So Memele, we're not going to assume that this fellow is a Levi because he's not a Levi, right? His father was a Kohen. Right? I mean, you have this fellow, his father is a Kohen. But then rumors started circulating that maybe this kid is a Ben Grusha, Ben Chalutza, maybe is a Chalal. Right? The Yentis, Shabbos afternoon, the bungalow colony, they start talking, maybe this kid is a Chalal. But then you see that they're giving him Meiser, Now, Memele, if you see this kid eating Meiser, you're not going to say, okay, maybe he's a Levi. His father's a Kohen. Where am I? So Levi to love Levi. So Michael and so what are you going to say? Ben Gusha or Ben Chalutza? You're going to say that he's a Ben Gusha or Ben Chalutza? That he's a Chalal? Now, certainly, according to the opinion who says that any non-Kohen or Levi right? That, well, let's say like this. As you know, I always like to spin it in the positive, not in the negative. So the positive way to see this would be that, well, if you say that Meiser Rishon can only be eaten by Kohanim and Levim, so then Memele, if this fellow was a Chalal, then they wouldn't be giving it to him. And therefore, if we know that this fellow's father is a Kohen, and we see that we're giving him Meiser Rishon, so Memele, he's a Kohen, he's not a Chalal. Because if he was a Chalal, then we wouldn't be giving it to him. We wouldn't be giving it to any non-Kohen or Levi. So Ella afilu man da amar Meiser Rishon mutar l'zorim, but we say even according to the opinion who says that non-Kohanim and Levim are permitted to eat Meiser Rishon, and therefore if this fellow is eating Meiser Rishon, maybe he is a Chalal, because after all anybody can eat Meiser Rishon. But hanimida lemispak lehu aval b'teres chalukah lo yavile. But even so, even if you hold that Meiser Rishon can be eaten by anybody, not just Kohanim and Levim, still, it can be eaten by anybody, but we're only going to give it milichatchila to Kohanim and Levim. And therefore, if what we're seeing is that they're giving this fellow Meiser Rishon, so then Memele, if we know his father is a Kohen, and we're giving him Meiser Rishon, Memele, he is not a Chalal, because if he was, we wouldn't be giving it to him. Alright? Yentis. V'acholik beveis din ein chazake. So now, we had said in the Brisa earlier that if Bezdin is giving a fellow truma, that doesn't necessarily mean he's a kohen. Now, even Bezdin lo avi chazaka, eich avi chazaka. 1 second, if our courts, dividing up truma to a fellow does not indicate he's a kohen, i.e., that we cannot rely upon the activity of the courts, well, then who can we rely upon? That's kind of the point of a court, is like as the final say in what we can assume, what we can rely upon, and how to act. And if we can't rely upon them, then what can we rely upon? I guess ein lanu lismoch ela Avinu Shabashamayim. But Avinu Shabashamayim said we should have courts, so then what do we do, Lemaisa? So Mivsheshes Achi Kamer says, Mivsheshes, this is what we're talking about. Acholek trume benichsei Oviv im echov bebezdin ena chazako. Oh, says of Sheshes. No, we're not simply talking about giving out truma. We're talking about that if Bezdin awarded to a certain fellow truma as part of his father's estate, so the father had an estate, and so the father had an estate, and they're dividing it up among the kids, the inheritors. And part of his estate was that he had a stash of truma, and they give this fellow part of the truma stash. So in a chazaka, that doesn't necessarily mean that this fellow is a kohen. All right, pshita, that's obvious. Well, I may have thought that from the fact that they're giving him this truma as part of his inheritance, and his brothers who are kohanim would be eating this truma, so we would assume that he's also eating this truma, which means that he also is a kohen, which is not true though, because it could be that they're giving it to him to sell, not to eat. And therefore, just because a fellow is awarded truma as part of his inheritance from, the Bezdin awards it to him, that does not necessarily mean that he's a kohen, because maybe they're only awarding it to him to then go and sell it, but not to consume it. So now continuing in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, so Rabbi Yehuda had said that we cannot assume that a fellow is a priest based on the claim of one witness. Now we had seen the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, who had said that we can rely upon one witness as long as there are no Erin, as long as there Orin, as long as there are no sort of people naysayers, people who are saying that he's not a kohen. As long as there are no naysayers, so then we can assume, based on the testimony of one fellow, that a fellow is a priest. Now we had seen Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, who said the name of Reb Shimon ben Askan, that we can rely upon an aid echad, one witness. Now it sounds like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is saying the same thing as Rabbi Lazar, that you can rely upon one witness. Because certainly Reb Shimon ben Elazar, what? We have Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar. Right? Because certainly when Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that you can rely upon one witness, it's talking about where there's nobody, no naysayers, right? So it sounds like short of naysayers, both Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel are saying that you can rely upon one witness. So aren't they saying the same thing? Ho 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 ho. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Hanu Rabbi Elazar. Ho ho ho. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel seems to be saying the same thing as Rabbi Elazar. So maybe we'll say that the nafkamina is how many naysayers there were. The Rabbi Elazar says, look, even if there's one naysayer, then we can no longer rely upon this individual witness, right? So we can rely upon an individual witness as long as there are no naysayers at all. But even if there's one naysayer, then we can no longer rely upon the one witness. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel saver here tre. Whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that dafka you need two naysayers in order to cause problems for this witness. But Amar Rabbi Yochanan div'akol in pachus mishnayim. But one second, Rabbi Yochanan says that everyone agrees that there have to be two naysayers in order for it to be significant, and therefore, so both Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel agree that when we're talking about naysayers, we're talking about two. So again, what's the difference between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? They seem to both be saying that short of two naysayers, we'd be able to rely upon one witness, and if there are two naysayers, then we cannot. So here we're talking about where we know that this fellow's father is a priest, is a kohen. But it was a Shabbos afternoon in the bungalow colony, and the yentis are sitting around, and they're trying to think what they should talk about. And they decide they're going to talk about the fact that maybe the son of this kohen is a ben grusha, ben chalutza, is a chalal. So now because of these yentis, so they said that, so now we're in doubt as to whether this fellow is a kohen or maybe he's a chalal. So we say, okay, we cannot trust that he is a kohen. Now comes one witness and he says, no. Yentis are going to yent. They're just being yentis. This fellow is the real deal. He's a real priest. So we say, alright, if you say so. So now he's back to being a kohen. So again, he was a kohen. The yentis did their thing. They made him maybe not a kohen. A fellow comes and says he's the real deal, so now he's a kohen again. But now two witnesses come. Rami ben Grusha ben Chalutzu. Two witnesses come and say, no, the yentis were right. He's a chalal. So once again we say, alright, well, I guess he's not a kohen. For the second time we made him a non-kohen. And now another witness comes and says, no, he's the real deal. Now everyone agrees that witnesses who come separately can nonetheless be joined together, right? So you have so you had one witness who came and said he's the real deal. Two witnesses says he's a chalal. Two witnesses say he's a chalal. And then another individual witness comes and says he's the real deal. So now sachakol, in total, you have two witnesses saying he's the real deal. Two witnesses saying he's a chalal. So now everyone agrees that you could join together two, the first witness and the last witness to make a double witness, right? Two witnesses. And the question now becomes, do we have to be concerned with sort of the trust of the Bezdin, right? Meaning, if Bezdin says, the yentis were talking, and Bezdin says, alright, we cannot assume that he's a kohen. And then a witness comes and says he's a kohen, so now we make him back a kohen again. And now two witnesses come and say he's not a kohen. So then, right, he's a chalal. So then we once again make him not a kohen. And now we have this other witness coming, or essentially now two witnesses, saying that he is a kohen, and now we're going to reinstate him again. It doesn't make the Bezdin look very good. And therefore, Rabbi Lazar's opinion would be that once already they removed him from being a kohen, from having the status of a kohen twice, we're not going to, right, we cannot rely upon this last individual witness to join together with the first one to say that now you have two witnesses and saying that he is a kohen, because it doesn't make the Bezdin look good that they keep on fluctuating. So Tanakama Sover came into Achtine lo maskinan le. So Rabbi Lazar's opinion is like, look, once they already removed him from being a kohen twice, we're not going to reinstate him as a kohen. Chashin l'zilusa devedina, it doesn't look good for the court. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel savar, whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel holds onan achtinon lei ve'onan maskinon lei ve'lizilusa devedina lo chashinon. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, look, we're the ones. What is it? Onan achtinon lei. We're the ones who said that we cannot trust that he's a kohen. Ve'onan maskinon lei. And we're the ones who can also, right, Bezdin could also reinstate him as a kohen. We're not concerned about the optics of how it looks for Bezdin. If there are two witnesses who are coming to say that this fellow is the real deal, he's a kohen, then we can make him a kohen. Don't worry about how it looks for Bezdin. Maskef Rav Ashi asks the kasha, afilu trei v'trei nami. Well, if that's the case, then what does this have to do with one witness? Even if two witnesses came at the end, right? Meaning, we're saying that what's the machlokas between Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel with regard to one witness? We're talking about with when one witness comes at the end, can he join together with the first witness to make two witnesses to then say that we could reinstate him as a kohen? And we say it's a question of zilusa de bedina, of the optics, how it looks for the bezdin. Now, for Rav Ashi, if this is the case, that we're worried about the optics of the bezdin, well then, it's not only if one person came at the end that they're arguing about, but even if two witnesses would have come and said, no, he's really a kohen, we still would not reinstate him as a kohen, since it doesn't look good for the Bezdin that they keep on fluctuating. So therefore, this really does, says Rav Ashi, it's hard to explain based on this, to make the argument about the fluctuation of the Bezdin, Zilusa de Beidina, to say that this has to do with one witness. It would be just as relevant for two witnesses. So Elo Omer Rav Ashi, rather says Rav Ashi, but mitzdarfen le'edus kamiflige. No, the machlokas is actually, can we join together witness one with the last witness, right? Right? The Yentis said that maybe he's a cholol. One witness says that he's a kohen. Two more witnesses say he's a cholol. One witness now comes, another witness comes and says he's a kohen. The question is, can we join together the first witness with the last witness to say that we have two witnesses saying that he's a kohen? We've looked at Dani Tanoi. It's like this. The following machlokas Tanoim, the Tanya is within the Brayse in Edusum Mitztarefes Ad Sheyushneim Ke'echod. Okay, in order for us to join together testimony, they have to have witnessed the same thing. So, for example, you can't have one witness who witnessed that they signed the document, right, that Reuven owes Shimon money, and the other one testifying that he was there at the time of the So Rashi says, right? So if you have one witness who's saying that I was there when Shimon lent Reuven the money, and the other witness was saying I was there when Reuven admitted that he owes Shimon money. So both witnesses are testifying about the fact that Reuven owes Shimon money, but they're not testifying to that they saw the same thing. One's testifying that they saw a loan, the other one's testifying that they saw Reuven admit that he owes money. But they're not testifying about the same exact thing, though. So the Tanakama says, so the testimony can only join together if they're both testifying about the same thing, that they both saw that, let's say, Shimon lent Reuven money. Whereas Rabbi Shua ben Korcha says, no, even if it's sort of one after the other, even if they're not testifying about the same exact thing. And says the Brayse that you can only join together the testimony if they testify at the same time together. Rav Nosson Omer says, Rav Nosson Shomen Dvarav Shel Zeh Hayom, U'chshayav Chaver L'Macha Shomen Dvarav. Whereas Rav Nosson says that no, you can listen to one aid today and then another aid tomorrow, and that's fine. They don't have to testify at the same exact time, and therefore we'll say that Rabbi Lazar requires their testimony to be at the same time in this case, and therefore we cannot rely upon this last witness. Whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel would say, like Rabbi Nosson, that they could testify separately, and therefore, if we have one witness testify first and then another witness testify later, we could join them together and rely upon them to assume that this fellow is in fact a Kohen. All right, friends, new Mishnah. So if you have a woman who is taken captive by idolaters, so if she was taken captive just as a ransom, right? For they had financial interests in this kidnapping. So then, if she's married to a Kohen, she's muteris to the Kohen, because we assume that if they were interested in a certain financial interest, they have no interest in harming this captive in any way, because they're really interested in just whatever financial goal that they have, and they'll leave her intact so that they can return her and get their money, which might complicate things if they violate her. Whereas but if they kidnapped her and they're like threatening to kill her, well then they don't care about her dignity or her at all, and then we assume that they raped her, and in the event that it was consensual, then she or even if it wasn't, we would say muteris levaila. So that could be even if he's not a kohen in that case. Right? Rashi says, in which case even if the husband wasn't a kohen, if it ended up being consensual, so then she would not be able to go back to him either. Says the Gemara, Amr of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchok Amr Rav, Loshanu Elo she'arisot kifa alov de kochavim. Now, when we say that if they kidnap this woman just for a financial ransom, so then she's muteris levaila. So that is only when sort of the Yidden are in control. But if the idolaters are sort of the more powerful party in the land, so then even if they only kidnapped her for a ransom, still she would not be permitted to her husband. Most Rava asked a kasha. Hey, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Zchariah ben Akatzev. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen and Rabbi Zchariah ben Akatzev testified Abbas Yisrael regarding a Jewess Hurhano be'Ashkelon, that she was somehow involved as a collateral somehow in Ashkelon, that she was given to the idolaters as a collateral in Ashkelon. Now, her family sort of distanced themselves from her on account of the fact that she was used as a collateral. I guess that they assumed that she was violated, and for that reason they wanted to stay away from her. But there are witnesses who are saying that look, she was never secluded with anybody, and don't assume that anything happened. And so she was never secluded, and she never had relations with any of her captors. The Chacham said to the family, look, if you believe that she was sort of used as a collateral, well, then also believe the witnesses who say that she was never secluded with any of her captor people. And if you do not believe the witnesses, so then also don't believe that she was part of some kind of a collateral. Now, and we see that and Ashkelon is a place where the idolaters were in control. Vikatani, and it says Hurana in Nechbisha Lo, that Davka in a situation where Davka in a situation where she was taken as collateral, that is why we required witnesses to testify that she didn't have relations with any of these people, because by collateral, if the time came to pay back whatever needed to be paid back or whatever, and it wasn't, so then we assume that there was an increased risk that they violated her, and that's why we need witnesses. But nech b'shalo, but if she was taken for a ransom, we wouldn't necessarily assume that they violated her, because they have their financial interest. So we say no. Huadin afilu nech b'shalo. No, the same would apply, that even if she was kidnapped for a ransom, just that story happened to be where it was a collateral as opposed to a ransom. But in any case, it would be like Shmuel Bar Yitzchok in the name of Rav, that in a place where you had Ovdei Kochavim Takifa, where the idolaters are sort of in control, so then whether it's a collateral or a ransom situation, if the Ovdei Kochavim are in control, then we have to assume that she was violated. Those who say says Rava af ononami tanina, that we actually have a support for Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, who says that in a place where the idolaters are in control, so then we have to assume that she was violated, even if it is for financial gain, for a ransom. That we have this Mishnah. Hey, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen Rabbi Chai ben Akatzav, that Rabbi Yossi HaKohen and Rabbi Chai ben Akatzav testified al Bas Yisrael Shehuran Ba'Ashkelon, regarding this Bas Yisrael that was taken as a collateral in Ashkelon, and her family, and her family distanced themselves from her. And there are witnesses who are testifying that she wasn't secluded, she wasn't, didn't have relations with any of these people. And the Chacham said, that if you believe that she was part of a collateral, so then believe that believe that she wasn't secluded and she didn't have relations with any of these people. And if you won't believe that she wasn't secluded and didn't have relations with any of these people, then don't believe that she was part of a collateral either. So, and we see that in Ashkelon, this was a situation where it was financial, and the reason why we could believe that she was not violated is because there were witnesses. But if there were no witnesses, so then we would not be able to believe that she was not violated. So we see that Ashkelon is a place where the Ovdei Kochavim Takifa, that the idolaters are the stronger people there, and we see that there was a financial situation, and we have to assume that short of witnesses, then we have to assume that she was violated. My lab, loshna horana, loshna nechbisha. We want to say that there's no distinction between collateral versus kidnapping for ransom, and in any case, we have to assume that she was violated. Lo hura nashanit, which we say it's not necessarily proof, because maybe davka, like in that davka in that story, was a collateral as opposed to ransom. But maybe a ransom situation, we could assume that they left her alone. Okay. Ikadarami la mirma. Those who say this whole thing as a question. Tanan aide mamun muteris levaila. On the one hand, in our Mishnah we said that if she was taken ransom, right, kidnapped for a ransom, so then she's permitted to her husband, because we could believe that she left her alone. We could believe that they left her alone. They were only interested in getting their ransom. V'raminu. But 1 second, we have a question. Hey, Rabbi Yossi v'chulei. The whole question based on this woman and the collateral and Ashkelon and the witnesses. For Ashkelon, the Aidei Mamon. So we see that Ashkelon, which was it was the Ovdei Kochavim are in control over there, and it was a situation of a financial situation, a collateral. V'katoni time the Eidim Eidim also, and we say Davka, it's because there are witnesses to testify that she was not violated. Ha'ein Eidim Eidim also low, but if short of witnesses, we cannot assume that she's tahora. So, what do we do? Right? Because on the one hand, in our Mishnah, we're saying that if it's Aidei Mamon, she's Mutaris Levaila. On the other hand, we have the situation in Ashkelon where Davke, we need witnesses. So Mishani Amr of Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak Lokasha Kan Shadisot Takifa Alov de Kochavim Kan Shadov de Kochavim Takifa Al Atzman. To which Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak says, well, it depends. If it's a place where the Yad Yisrael is Takifa, so then we could assume that if it's for financial situations, so we could assume that she's Tahora. But if it was a place where Yad Ovdei Kochavim Takifa, so then we need witnesses, otherwise we have to assume that she was violated. Now if they took her on account of that they were going to kill her, so then it's a different story. And we have to assume that she was violated because they don't care about her. Rav says, Rav Kigon Noshe Ganove, for example, the wives of thieves. Levi Omer Kigon Ishtoshal Ben Donoi, and some say, for example, the wife of Ben Donoi, who apparently was a Jewish murderer. Okay, and maybe they took her and violated her. Omer Chizkiah V'hu Shenigmar Dinan Lariga, says Chizkiah that is Davka if they, these women were sentenced to death. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Afal Pi Shelo Nigmar Dinan Lariga, and says Rabbi Yochanan, even if they were not sentenced to death, still they would violate these women. Oh, I'm sorry, not if these women were sentenced to death, but the husbands. If the husbands were sentenced to death, then they won't care about the wives. So that's what Chizkiah says, that Davka, the husbands had to be sentenced to death, whereas Rabbi Yochanan says that even if the husbands were not sentenced to death. Okay, friends, well, that was Daf Chav Vav, Masechta Ksubis. Well, okay, we discussed at the beginning of the page, we saw that there was Machlokas Rebbe and Chia, or not necessarily Machlokas, but Rebbe said that we could trust a father to testify about his son that he's a Kohen. Rebbe Chia says we could testify about a brother to say that his brother is a Levi. And we said that according to Rebbe Chia, Davka is talking about a situation of Mesiach Lefitumo, situation where he's just kind of like unfilteredly babbling, that is when we can trust his testimony that his brother is a Levi. We saw an interesting machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that we had seen in Masechta Yevamis as well, about who gets Meiser, right? That Rabbi Akiva says Dafka Kohanim get Trumeh and Leviim get Meiser, whereas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says even Leviim can get, even Kohanim can eat Meiser as well. And we say that Davka, after the Gezerah of Ezra, that because the Levites didn't come to Eretz Yisrael during the Second Temple, so Ezra said that priests will get the Meiser instead. So if you see a fellow eating Meiser, so then you can assume that he is a priest. Although we said that maybe, what about in a situation where maybe they happen to give Meiser to a Levi, so then maybe in that, right, so then in that case the Levi would be able to eat it. So we say Dafka, we can assume that if you see a fellow eating Meiser, that he's a priest in a situation where the Yentis started spreading rumors that a fellow was a Chalol, but then we see that they were giving him Meiser, so we can assume that he's in fact a priest. We then got into the machlokas between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, both of whom seem to be saying that we could trust a single witness regarding a Kohen, to testify about a Kohen, that he is in fact a priest. And so the question is, what's the difference between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? So the first way we understood it was, well, it's talking about a situation where we had a fellow, we assume was a Kohen, but then the Yentis started saying that maybe he wasn't a Kohen, and then we have one witness who says that no, he is a Kohen, but then two witnesses say he's not a Kohen. Now we have another witness who says he is a Kohen. So the question is, everyone agrees that we could trust this last guy, we connect him with the first guy, now we have two witnesses, but it doesn't look good for the Bezdin that they keep on going back and forth saying he is a Kohen, isn't a Kohen. So Rabbi Elazar says, look, we can't trust this witness anymore after Bezdin has already twice said that this fellow is not a Kohen. And whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, we can trust this guy to join together with the first guy. Now we have two witnesses saying that he's a kohen, and we could assume that he's a kohen. Rav Ashi didn't like that because if that's the case, then it doesn't necessarily need to be one kohen, even if one witness, even if two witnesses came at the end and said he's a kohen, we shouldn't believe him because we're concerned about the bezdin. Rather, the machlokas is, can the last witness join together with the first witness? Rabbi Elazar says no, he cannot. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says yes, he can. Then we got to a new Mishnah where we said that if you have a woman who was taken captive for financial ransom, so we can assume that she can go back to her husband, that she was not violated. But if it was related to sort of iske nefashos, to a capital case, so then they won't really care about her, and we have to assume that she was violated. Shmuel Bar Yitzchak said that even in financial situations, if it's a place where the Ovdei Kochavim are stronger, so then even for financial situations, we have to assume that she was violated. Well, friends, that was Avchav Vav Masechta Ksubis. Peace.